All right, into our notes for the day. We're going to review equations. So if we create one here and we do 3, go ahead and write with me. 3 times an unknown number, we'll say y. So 3 times y plus 2 equals 23. The goal is to find the value of the variable y. Okay, so you can do it with mental math. Let's say maybe you think it's 2. If you think it's 2, you would do 3 times, and instead of y, you'd plug in a 2. 3 times 2 plus 2. Does that equal 23? 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8. Okay, 8 does not equal 23. So we know that y isn't 2. So instead of guessing and checking, we do have steps that'll let us get that answer more quickly. And when we start having fractions and decimals and things like that thrown into our equations, we really want to make sure that we know these steps. So here's what you do. You probably remember this prior to break. Equations have a left-hand side, don't write this part, and they have a right-hand side. So we draw that line down the center of the equal sign to distinguish the left-hand side from the right. Okay, start writing again with me. The goal is to find the value of y, or whatever variable we have. So to do that, we need to get that variable by itself. We need to get it alone. Right now it has a 3 with it, which is called a coefficient. Making a mess here, sorry, let me put that 3 back. That 3 is called a coefficient, and it has a 2 with it, and that 2 is called a constant. The difference between the two is a coefficient is next to the variable, and a constant is just a number by itself. So what we need to do is there are 2 steps. Step 1, we need to get rid of the constant. The integer that is alone. Okay, so the integer that is alone is this one, 2. So how do we get rid of a 2? We subtract 2. Hopefully this is starting to come back to you. If you subtract 2 on the left-hand side, you also have to subtract 2 on the right-hand side. Positive 2 and negative 2 cancel, and that leaves us with 3 times y here on the left. Bring your equal sign down. 23 minus 2 is 21. Now we have a new equivalent equation. It just says 3 times some number is 21. Now you can probably guess the number. If you can't, we do step 2. And that is get rid of the coefficient. Coefficient is the number with the variable, the one that's paired with the variable. So it's that 3. And we need to make sure we're reading that. It's 3 times y. So to get rid of it, you do the opposite of multiplication. You're going to divide by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. Cancels. You get y. Whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other. So we have to do 21 divided by 3, and we get y equals 7. To check that, you take your original equation, 3 times y plus 2 equals 23. We said we think y equals 7. So we're going to plug it in. Instead of 3 times y, it's going to be 3 times 7 plus 2 equals 23. And then you use PEMDAS, the order of operations, and you solve out. And if it equals the same thing on both sides, you got it right. So 3 times 7 is 21 plus 2. 21 plus 2 is 23. 23 equals 23. So we know we solved our equation correctly, and y equals 7. All right, let's take a look at one more in the notes. Same goal here. We want to find the value of the variable. In this case, the variable is x. So we're looking over here. It says, looking at this problem, write it down with me. 1/2 times x, or 1/2 times an unknown number, minus 6 equals 28. So when you have fractions thrown in, you can see that this is going to be quite a bit more difficult. So let's pick a number. Let's say we think x is 10. Okay, so 1/2 of 10 minus 6 equals 28. So if you guess 10, here's what you would do. 1/2 of 10 is 5. 5 minus 6 is -1. -1 is not equal to 28. So therefore, x is not 10. Not 10. So instead of guessing and checking, let's go ahead and use our steps. 10 wasn't even close, actually. So let's draw our line down the equal sign. So we create a left-hand side and a right-hand side. That wasn't a very good line. And then we'll go through our steps. We're going to get rid of the constant first. In this case, the constant is -6 or -6. So we're going to add 6 to both sides. -6 and +6 cancel. That's going to leave us with 1/2 of x, or 1/2 of some number, equals 34. Step 2 is to get rid of the coefficient. In this case, the coefficient is 1/2. Okay, so to get rid of 1/2, we need to divide by 1/2. That doesn't sound very fun. So there's a rule. Instead of dividing by 1/2, you can do what's called multiply by the reciprocal. And that just means the reciprocal of 1/2 is 2/1. Okay, the reciprocal of 1/4 would be 4/1. It basically just means you take the fraction and you flip it over. So if we multiply by the reciprocal, we're multiplying by 2/1. What that would equal would be 2 times 1 is 2, and 1 times 2 is 2. 2/2 is 1. Okay, so if you multiply by the reciprocal, this becomes 1x, or just x. If we multiply by the reciprocal over here, it's 34/1 times 2/1. Remember, we're multiplying by that same number on both sides. And that's going to give us 34 times 2 is 68/1. That's just 68. So x equals 68. We can check it. We'll take our original equation, 1/2 times x minus 6 equals 28. We'll plug in what we think x is worth. 1/2 of 68 minus 6 equals 28. And now we solve out using PEMDAS. 1/2 of 68, or 68 divided by 2, it's 34. 34 minus 6 is 28. So we're correct. X equals 68. And hopefully you learned in that problem, and we will do one together. If you have a fraction that you need to divide by, you're allowed to multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to give you one to try as a group, and we'll work through it together so you guys can try this out. This is the end of our notes. Be ready to try a few equations.